Hello, viewers. It's time to get my hand in the jar. It's been a long time since I brewed a 3-stage Korean rice wine, and that's called a Samyangju. So I'll be doing that today, and I'll be using a very special NURUK called Sunuruk. I'll tell you all about that in today's episode. So I'd like to give a huge thanks to Professor Sunook Park and the California Suul Institute who sent me this NURUK. That made this episode possible and inspired me to do a 3-stage brew. I rarely get a chance to brew with a new kind of NURUK, so this is a really special opportunity for me. I'm grateful to be able to do this. Thanks to the California Suul Institute and Professor Sunuruk Park. If you like this video, please click that like button and subscribe, and please share this video wherever it is appropriate. I really appreciate your help in spreading the word about rustic Asian rice wine, especially makgeolli. So what is the California Suul Institute? Well, here's the website. And please note that's Suul with 2 U's, S-U-U-L. So the California Suul Institute is a scholarly institution researching and upholding the value of Korean Suul culture and tradition. There's a lot of information here about traditional Korean alcohol, recipes, and advice for brewing. And the advice is very detailed and careful. And they also do workshops, demonstrations, and exhibits. And on this website, there's some information about this book. The author of this book, the first author here, is Sunuruk Park, and the title of this book is Korean Alcohol Branding. And I soon found out that Professor Park is the one who runs this website. Here's his biography in the book. And so, what is Sunuruk? Well, Sunuruk is Professor Park's own homemade NURUK made with wheat and barley and mung beans, and it's germinated with rosemary, sage, and lavender. And so it's a real artisan, handmade product, and he was kind enough to send some to me to brew with. So that's really a special gift. I will brew with this special gift. So here are the chunks of NURUK. They're still a bit large. I'm going to break them up a bit and also put them in the sun, the babche method. So I'm going to break this down. It doesn't have to be a complete powder. I just want the largest pieces to be bean-sized. That's the maximum size that I want, so that's okay. There can still be chunks, that's fine. And this is the babche method, putting the NURUK in the sun, freshens it up a bit, and gets it ready for brewing. Because this is a special NURUK, I'm going to do a special brew, 3 stages, and I just want to review some of the principles of multiple stage rice wine brewing. So here are 3 principles. You start off with small stages. The initial stages are with small amounts of rice, and each stage is larger than the previous one. And you also proceed from more wet rice preparation methods to drier rice preparation methods. So you'd start with something with a lot of water per amount of rice, and you would end the last stage, you would end with godubap, just the steamed rice and no additional water. And another direction you go is the initial stages, you stir a lot. You want a lot of oxygen in there. And the later stages should be less stirring or no stirring by the end. And overall, so the overall goal for these multiple stage brews is to have a balance between saccharification and fermentation, and balance between the yeast reproducing and the yeast making alcohol. And hopefully by doing these multiple stages, the successive generations of yeast will become more alcohol tolerant, and you'll end up with more alcohol in the end, but also a smoother taste, because it will have time, things will be more balanced, and they'll have time to grow and consume the food that's available to them that you've added in multiple stages. So that's the idea behind multiple stage recipes. And I do have an earlier video that talks about how to plan multiple stage recipes, the amount of rice and water and the different preparation methods. So what I'm going to show you today is a Samyangju, a 3-stage brew. The first stage is going to be a rice flour porridge, juk. Second stage is going to be an undercooked porridge, or bombok. And the third stage is going to be godubap, the hard steamed rice. So note the amount of rice in each stage is increasing. 150 grams, 200 grams, then 850 grams. Also notice that the rice to water ratio starts off as 1 to 4. The second stage is 1 to 3. And then the third stage, there's no additional water other than the water that's absorbed by the rice. So that follows the principles of multiple stage brewing. And the other thing I want you to notice is that the first 2 stages are with regular rice flour, mepsal garu, and the third stage is with chapsal, sweet rice. So let's get brewing. So day 0, stage 1 is juk. I'm just using this dry rice flour, 150 grams. And this is regular rice flour, not sweet rice flour. 600 milliliters of water, so that's a 1 to 4 rice to water ratio. And as always, you have to continuously stir this. It's on medium heat, and you have to continuously stir. Don't stop stirring it. It'll thicken up. Once it decides to thicken up, it'll thicken up very quickly, and so you have to be stirring it the whole time. And you'll know when it's happening. Okay, there it goes. Takes about 10 minutes. This is the juk. Set it aside to cool to below 30 degrees Celsius. And this is the Sunuruk that has basked in the sun for a day. And as I'm waiting for the juk to cool down, I'm going to soak this NURUK in 175 milliliters of water. The reason I'm able to add additional water here is because I'm using the dry rice flour, so the total amount of water that the rice flour would have absorbed would have been half its weight if it had been wet milled instead of in dry form. So that's why I'm allowed to add just a little bit more water. I'm going to use that water to soak the NURUK. So I'm going to stir it up and set it aside. Okay, and now the juk has been cooled. So this NURUK has really been treated well. It was sunned for a day. It's soaked in water for more than 2 hours. And then I vigorously mixed it with the juk for 10 minutes. And this is important. The juk is a little thick to begin with. It's hard to work with, but after mixing it with the NURUK and mixing it really well, it starts to soften. The enzymes have already started working, and it's becoming softer. And I'm able to pour it into my fermentation jar, which I've sanitized previously. So I'm able to carefully pour this into the jar. Now it's more liquid. And, yeah. I'm not getting my hand into the jar yet. I'm still just stirring it with the spoon. Okay, but that's the first stage. and it's around 22 to 24 degrees Celsius. I'm just going to put it in the cabinet and look at it the next day, and it's bubbling. And yeah, look at the top. That's just activity from the yeast that's already in the NURUK. I added no additional yeast here. And I'm going to stir this twice a day for the first 2 days. Now it's the evening of day 1, and it's really puffed up. There's kind of a crust or layer on top, but don't worry about it. We're going to stir that in. And then on day 2, it's settled out a bit. It is still bubbling. I can still hear it bubbling. And I'm stirring it again. And it's time for the second stage. I'm going to boil 700 milliliters of water because I really need 600 milliliters of boiling water. I'm using 200 grams of rice flour, and I'm pouring the boiling water into the rice flour a bit at a time and stirring it as I go. And so 200 grams of rice flour, 600 milliliters of boiling water. That makes this bombach. And I want to cool this down to below 30 degrees Celsius. Okay, this looks good now, and let's get that into the jar. This is a bit more difficult because it's all clumpy. And it requires a lot of stirring. Again, we're going to want to stir this for 10 minutes or so. Get that bombach into the first stage. So this is the second meal for the yeast. So the yeast has been reproducing. Look, all that bubbling, you can tell it's doing well. And now it's time for another meal. That's the second stage. And back into the cabinet it goes. Okay, and we're going to prepare for the third stage. We're going to do the third stage tomorrow. So tonight I'm measuring out 850 grams of sweet rice. I'm going to wash and gently rinse this for about 10 minutes. Don't be harsh. It is important to be gentle. And over time the water will become more clear. But if you're really rough with it, it'll just keep on breaking off bits of rice and it'll never become clear. Okay, so this is chop sal. This is for godubab. So I'm going to cover this and soak it overnight. Then the next morning, let's take a look at the jar. It's even bubblier than before. Lots of rapid, tiny bubbles. I'm going to stir this again, and I'm going to get the rice ready. I'm going to drain the rice. Get one last rinse. And drain that for 30 minutes. And in the meantime, get the steamer ready and up to temperature. That's a piece of strong cheesecloth that's been dampened. And spread the rice out evenly. Cover the rice with the edges of the cheesecloth and put the lid on the steamer again. And steam it for 40 minutes. So make sure to start your timer when the steam starts escaping the steamer. Don't start your timer too early. And after 40 minutes, carefully get the edges of the cheesecloth and lift out the godubab. So I'll spread it out to cool. And again, we're cooling to below 30 degrees Celsius. Now I can put in the godubab as the third stage into the jar. And now it's time for the hand. Get my hand in the jar and mix that up well. And because I'm using my hand, I can feel the grains of rice and make sure they're not sticking to each other. That's the third stage. And again, with a loose lid, it goes back into the cabinet. Now, day 4, watch those bubbles. So it's producing plenty of gas in there. It's puffed up. The level is pretty high. Day 5, yeah, still lots of bubbles. And the top is still wet, but the space where the gas has bubbled to the surface. So you can start to see it forming distinct layers. And I'm not stirring it at this point at all. No more stirring here. And it's still fermenting. It's smelling quite sweet. And this Sunuruk is quite dark in color because of the varied ingredients in it, barley and mung beans. So you can see a lot of that dark material is settled into a layer near the top. There's some more clear liquid in the middle and the grains of rice also in the middle, and just cloudy sediment in the bottom portion of the jar. And now the clear layer has moved up to the top. So that's the Samyangju layer. The Samyangju, the best part of the brew, that's appearing on the top. So I know for sure that this NURUK is quite powerful. It's really done its job. I smell the sweetness and the progress of the fermentation here. It's obvious that the NURUK is powerful. And then on day 23, I'm going to bottle it. It's settled down a bit, and I'm getting impatient to taste it. So look at that Samyangju on the top. I'm going to boil my filter bag. If you're interested, please see the description for links to the equipment I use. So I'm going to do something different this time. Instead of stirring the jar before filtering and bottling, I'm going to bottle the top clear layer first, then the lower cloudy layers. So this is going to be a little more work, a little trickier. I'm going to try to just get more of the Samyangju from the top and keep that separate from the other layers. And there is a lot of sediment on the bottom here. I'm not sure if that's if I've done something wrong or not. So hopefully I can tell which is the good tasting part by keeping it separated. So there's some sediment in the top, despite what I'm trying to do. It's still a little cloudy, but it's mostly Samyangju in this first bottle. And then for the next bit, I'm just going to pour the rest of the jar through the filter bag like I normally do, and try to get every bit out of the bottom. So this is the bottom layer with all the sediment. Squeeze that out. Not too hard to filter. There's 235 grams of jjigae in total. That's pretty good. So it doesn't seem like there was any fermentation problem at all. This worked okay. Still don't know why it seemed like there was so much sediment at the bottom though. I am going to do a second squeezing as well. I'll add 200 milliliters of water to the jjigae and squish it around and squeeze again. And that way I get an extra bowl of makgeolli. So it went down from 235 to 209. And there's my extra bowl of makgeolli. So that's the bonus bowl. And you can see the first bottle has already started settling into Samyangju at the top. Second bottle is quite white and milky colored. And same with the third. The third bottle is even thicker. That's what it looks like right after bottling. I'm going to taste this a few days later and then the next week as well to get an idea of the flavors. But just tasting it right after bottling, this bonus bowl has a sweet smell, but it has a dry taste and actually quite like apple peel taste. So fruity, but a bit astringent, and not not particularly sweet, quite dry, and that means the sugar, most of the sugar was converted to alcohol. So that's interesting so far. I'm going to taste the other bottles on later days. So it's been 2.5 weeks, and I'm going to taste the Chongju right now. This was the first bottle I filtered, and I took it from the top of the jar, which was mostly the clear liquid, and it's still a bit cloudy, but and I'm sure it'll get more clear as time goes on, but I want to taste it. So it smells pretty sweet, a bit like apple juice. Okay, but the taste is quite dry and astringent at the end. It only has a bit of sweetness right at the very beginning. It's quite a rich taste, and it seems pretty strong, high in alcohol. Yeah, so this is not mild at all. There's a lot of flavors in there. The fruitiness at the beginning is sort of apple flavored. It's not particularly sour. There is some tartness, the amount of tartness that I expect, but it's not sour. All right. Okay, so this Chongju should be able to age for a long time in the fridge. I'll keep on tasting it as time goes on, but I would expect this to last for at least a year in the fridge. Okay, so that's the Chongju. I expect it to only improve as time goes on, but it's tasty right now. And this is the second bottle, which has a lot more sediment. So I'm going to mix this up and drink this as takju. And I should mention that this brewed for a long time, and when I bottled it, it wasn't carbonated, and it is still not carbonated. So there's no problem opening these bottles. This has an extra aroma to it. Hard to describe. A little rubbery. Okay, luckily, it doesn't have a rubbery taste. And obviously, this does have a thicker texture. I think more astringency. So I think the sediment has some bitterness to it. It did seem like it settled into layers, and there was a lot of a certain kind of sediment at the bottom. I'm not sure why that happened. I'll brew with this Sunuruk again and see if I can make any changes that will affect the fermentation and the flavor. Again, this tastes quite strong. This is strong, definitely stronger than any of my single stage brews. Multiple stages really do increase the alcohol percentage of your brew. Okay, still a pleasant taste, a bit of milkiness. In the aftertaste. And but also some astringency and bitterness. So I'll see what I can do to improve that next time. But I definitely made a strong Changju and a strong Takju. Oh yeah, I can. Okay, this is quite a bit stronger than just the single stage brew. Yeah, it's really quite noticeable. Yeah. All right. So it was a real treat to get this special NURUK, the Sunuruk from Professor Sunook Park and the California Suul Institute. A very special NURUK. And I hope you enjoyed seeing me brew with it. Let me know what you think in the comments. Thank you for watching.